everybody for taking the time to jump on the call this afternoon. I am excited to host, for Rachel and Craig to host this estate planning seminar. We haven't done anything like this in quite a few years, and the CLHSA just feels like we need to offer the service to those in our community just to be good stewards and make sure everybody is prepared for the future. So just a couple of housekeeping things that I'll say again at the end is everybody on here will get a follow-up email from me after this with this information and some new information that you'll learn throughout the presentation. So I hope you find this helpful. And then Craig and Rachel are going to take this away. So just a quick intro on them. Rachel is Rachel Lyons. Her maiden name is Hessler. She is the 2006 grad of Lutheran West. She now works at Wegman Hessler. And we have been working together with Rachel in the estate planning capacity for just under a year now. And so we are happy to have an alum participating in this and helping us help those in our community. And then Craig Mellendorf, I met Craig, I think it was just a little over 2 years ago. We met at a roundtable where a bunch of development professionals from Lutheran churches and schools around the country met to kind of brainstorm and plan out what works for them and what hasn't worked. And I met Craig there, and he presented this estate coaching program, which is something I had never heard of. And it took me a little while to get there, but we finally partnered with him in 2020, and it has been so successful thus far. And Craig works with a number of Lutheran churches and schools across the country. So we are excited to have him be part of our mission here in Cleveland. So I will let the two of them get started on the presentation.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, for a couple things. First, the little passage there, Ecclesiastes 3:1. For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. We have a quote that we share at the beginning of any of our presentations, is that death is a certainty and being prepared is a responsibility. And if you've ever been on the short end of someone who hasn't been prepared, you know how important it is to be prepared for this. And just to let you know, if many of you do not have something in place, that's very common. Do not think, oh my gosh, we should have done this. Don't worry about that part. So we're just going to share with you some ideas why estate planning is essential, and we can talk about how to protect your family. We're going to identify those assets and beneficiaries, and then selecting the right tool to use to carry out your plan. So a couple of questions, really, not question, but a couple of statements is, the first thing is, why do people not have a will or trust in place? And there's 5 of them. And the first one is, some people just don't see the need for estate plans. And it comes down to more so that they just think, my kids will take care of it. You know, they'll just take care of it. I don't have to worry. I don't have that much stuff. And there's that kind of that mentality where it is someone else can take care of this. I'm too old. I don't care. We don't have to worry about it. Everything will be taken care of. That's the first one. Next one is, no one plans on dying anytime soon. That's kind of a fascinating one. You know, usually people die for 4 reasons sooner than they expect. You know, we always talk about there's sometimes because of an illness, they'll die. They'll die because of an accident. They'll die because of some type of catastrophe of some kind. And then the last one is war. People die young in war. And so no one plans on dying soon or before they get to the ripe old age of 70s and 80s or even 90s nowadays. So they just don't think about it because they don't plan on that side of it. The next one is they don't want to pay for it. Costs too much. And most people, when I talk to families, and I've worked with over 800 families now, is they really don't have an idea of how much it costs. Average wills in estate plans is about anywhere between $600 and $800, and trusts are anywhere between $1,200 and $1,800, maybe $2,200. And so some people right away go, well, that sounds really expensive. Let me try and put this in perspective. I'm married. I have 4 daughters. All 4 daughters were living in the house at one point, and they were all driving the cars. We had 4 cars. Anybody want to guess how much I was paying in car insurance every single year for those 6 of us, it was $4,600 a year, and 3 of the cars were not worth $4,000. So, I mean, we put protections on things that we think we have to do or are important. We don't realize we're really protecting our entire estate. And this could be for 10 to 15, possibly even 20 years. So when you put a price on $600 to $800 or maybe $1,500 to do a trust, that's really not very expensive when you get down to the idea that everything is taking place the way that you want it to be taken place. The next one is that we have a quote that just goes, complexity is the enemy of execution. So it's a lot of times it's a should. Yeah, we should do that. We should do that. So my record in talking to these 800 families is that one family said, we've been wanting to do this for 29 years. They at least admitted it. I was shocked. I mean, that's kind of surprising, but they admitted that 29 years, they have been thinking about getting a will or a trust in place. And the bottom line was, they just didn't know who to go to. They didn't know how to do this. The terminology, they didn't quite understand. And so as a result of that, that complexity, or what appears to be complexity, is the enemy of execution. Now, just to let you know, the average family is 9 years that they've been talking about doing this before they actually do it. So if you're in that boat, you're in good company. So don't worry about it, I guess is what I'm saying. If anybody's over 29 years, I'd love to talk to you because I'm just curious. So more than anything else. And then the last one is they don't think they have enough assets to even have a will. And we're going to talk about more of this today. And quite frankly, everyone we talk to has enough assets to have a will in place. And so we'll talk about where money is. Most families, money is in 3 places, just to let you know. Most families, it's in the equity in your home, it's in your life insurance policy, and it's in whatever retirement plan that you have, whether it's a 401k, 403b, IRA, or a Roth. And when you add those up, in the people that we've worked with, that averages between $1.2 and $1.4 million for the average family. So some people, I was working with a professor at Concordia University up here in Mequon, Wisconsin, and I got done doing his estate inventory, and I said, so what do you think you're worth? And he goes, I don't know, maybe 800,000. I said, it's $1.8 million. And he goes, well, where is it? And I said, well, it's not in your back pocket. It's first off, it's in all these 3 different places. And he was worth more than what he thought he was. The unfortunate thing is, for some of us, we're maybe worth a little bit more when we die than we are while we're alive. A lot of times it has to do with the life insurance policies. So next up on the list is this. If you do have a will, a couple things to take in consideration. How old is it? So most people get their first will when they have their first child and they're going on vacation for the first time without that child. And then mom really gets panicky and wants to go, oh, we better get something in place now. And then the other 3 kids that they have are not named in the will. They might be in terminology, but not named in the will. So they never get anything, they never really finish it out. They never review it again. So we always say you should review your will trust every 5 to 7 years. And also tax laws change. So does this reflect an understanding of the tax laws? Does your old will or your one trust that you've already established, does it show that? You have a charitable component in it. So that's something very powerful to be able to do. If there's been organizations that you want to share, you've been sharing with throughout your lifetime, there's some great possibilities and vehicles in which you can be very charitable and your family can still receive a major portion of your estate. And this one's a tough one, but did you ever consider the positive or negative effects of those distributions to your children? We're going to talk more about this a little bit too, but I always say if you have 2 kids, one's a saver and one's a sieve. And it just seems to go that way. And, being fair and equal. Well, being fair and equal sometimes is not easy to do when you have 2 different children. Nobody has the same 2. Everyone has something a little different. And then are there options, opportunities to help reduce and eliminate taxes, which we can hopefully show you in some of those possibilities. So here's the question that comes up next is this. I think this is the polling question, is it not? Yes. So how many of you know someone your age or younger that has died? How many of you know someone your age or younger that has died? And I think you can just click on it, right?
At least for me, it's having you answer all the questions at once. So it's showing all 4 of them.
Go ahead and just respond to question number 1 and then hit submit.
It won't let you do that.
Okay. Oh, got. Okay, we'll have a few things. I'll reconstitute them as soon as we're done with this one.
Okay.
Submit is next, is what I have, Judy.
You do have submit?
No, I have, it says next.
Okay. Hit next. All right. Thanks, Doris.
Mhm.
All right, good. Thank you. You're all on it, Doris. Thank you.
So, something
Here
should
we go.
pop up there. Okay.
Here we go. Share results.
All right. Now that's typical. Everyone knows someone younger than them that have passed away. Now, I bring this up is for a couple reasons. One is, as we look at the next slides, I just want you to take a look at this for a second. And what is common, what is similar between all these people? As you look at those people pop up, I'm not sure. On my screen, the results are still up there. Yeah, there we go. Good. So look at these people and tell me, what do you think is similar about all these people? And that's not a polling question. I'll just kind of pop it up there. So all of these people actually passed away before they had a will or estate plan in place, because none of them planned on dying when they did. That was the big case. Sonny Bono, and I'm not making fun of this at all. Sonny Bono didn't wake up that morning when he went skiing, was planning on and was skiing down the hill, hit a pole, and actually died as a result of that horrific accident. But he didn't plan on that day was the day that was going to happen. And I don't know if you've ever seen any of the information that came out of his family. It was terrible. The whole idea of what they were trying to do with the state. There were people fighting over it consistently. Prince is another one that just recently happened. Prince's estate is still not finalized. And I believe it's been 6 or 7 years at this point in time. You know, Abraham Lincoln didn't go to the theater that night thinking he was going to be shot. That was not in his mind. So things happen, and why we need to be prepared. Again, death is a certainty. Being prepared is a responsibility. And then on the front cover, just to kind of show this, because this is kind of unique when you think about it, is on the front cover of the Wall Street Journal, on the next slide, is this. This was actually on the front page. What Prince and Abraham Lincoln have in common. And you can read kind of the little part down there is where there's a will, there's a way, and where there's no will, where it's much more complicated, as illustrated in the part that was happening with the Prince estate. So it's very important to make sure that we take care of these things and not just leave them there. Okay, next slide. So how many of you know someone who has died without a will or estate plan?
Just go ahead and put yes or no in the chat.
Can you show the poll results again, Judy, or no?
I'll as I'm moving through, I'm trying to reconstitute them. So far, we have all yeses.
My question didn't pop up as of yet to respond.
Can you type in the chat room, Doris?
Let's see, I'm not computer savvy, but I will certainly try.
Good. What's your answer? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Perfect.
that's good enough.
There
We're
you go.
good.
That works just as good, right? That's great.
Yes.
Sometimes you just don't need computers.
So it sounds like most people have had this experience, whether you've done this with your parents. That's what we could have asked. That would have been interesting too. How many have had this happen with your parents or a loved or someone that you know, a family member? And I bet it would be very similar too. So just kind of, I just want to, so November this last year, I was working with a couple and they said, I just want to show you, prove a point to all this. And they pulled up a safety deposit key. And the safety deposit key was to a safety deposit box at a bank somewhere in the city of Milwaukee that their dad had taken out, but he never told anyone where it was. and they couldn't close out the probate until they found out what was in it. Now, I don't know about you, but that would take a little bit of time and a little bit of legwork to go through and try and find where is this key. So that's just kind of a point of reference of how this thing can be so frustrating if there's nothing in place. So a couple of statistics real quick. 65% of families do not have a will estate plan. 65%. 7 out of 10 who have one don't even know what's in it. 75% are going to leave the minors, will leave the guardianship to the court. Here's an interesting one. Only 8% of families that have a will and have given generously during their lifetime have a charitable component in the will. And what we have found is, not all, but a lot of attorneys don't bring this up unless you bring it up to them. So when you're going to, if you go to an attorney who's not charitable minded or doesn't consider that side of it, unless you bring it up to them, they don't bring it up. And we already know that religious people are 4 times more likely to give to charity than non-religious people. So it's kind of interesting how these statistics, these are facts that are out there right now in the whole realm of the estate planning.
All right, I'm gonna take it from here for a while and then switch it back to Craig after some time. So, you know, it's been an odd year. It's been a hard year for a lot of people. If it hasn't been difficult for you, it's probably just been strange and a lot of unusual events that have occurred for all of us. You know, but the pandemic has been a trigger, and I've seen this in a lot of my clients. You know, it's been a trigger for them to first take stock of their blessings, to say, you know, what's important, what is meaningful, and you know, to say thanks for those things, but also to take a step back and say, hey, you know, when the unexpected happens, am I going to be prepared? Is my family going to be prepared? And so we have another question here, which you might have answered already. How many people know someone who at some point or another, whether it was a short period of time or a long period of time, was unable to receive visitors?
Go ahead and put that in the chat room, and then Doris can tell us herself. There we go. Looks like 100% again.
So as an estate planning attorney, this was really hard. You know, if I had somebody who needed a healthcare power of attorney done, or a will done, or something like that, and they were already in the hospital or they were in a nursing home, there were situations where we were just out of luck. And so one thing that COVID has taught us is that, you know, you have to prepare before you need anything. And Craig was speaking to this too. Before the unexpected happens, before you get old enough to need something, you need to prepare. Or if you have an estate plan in place already, which a lot of people, you know, might have a version of an estate plan. When was the last time you updated it? Are your children's phone numbers and information up to date so that they would be able to be contacted, you know, if something happened to you? So, you know, that's a huge thing that COVID has taught us. You can go to the next slide, Judy. Oh, you did. Another, you know, other disadvantages to not having things in place, you know, cost. The way that this works, and not a lot of people realize this, if you die without an estate plan, okay, you just die without an estate plan. What happens is everything that you own that doesn't have beneficiary designations ends up in probate court, okay? We open up a court proceeding, and then the court supervises the administration to pass it out to whoever your next of kin is. And there's like default rules. It might be unexpected to some of you, but it does generally follow like to a spouse and children in a lot of cases, but the court supervises that. You know, and I recently was involved with a matter where a gentleman passed away. He had 2 children. They both live out of state. Okay, they're not Ohio residents. And because they both live out of state and he didn't have a will who named either one of them as executor, the court required that an Ohio resident be appointed to administer the estate. Okay, that's part of Ohio law. If you don't have a will appointing someone, they have to appoint an Ohio resident. So an attorney had to be appointed to do this, and it's been 2 years. This is a man who owned, a house, a bunch of, retirement accounts, some bank accounts, some stocks, things like that. And it's taking a long time, and it'll probably be, $30,000, $40,000 in fees by the time you pay the lawyer and you pay the person appointed to be the executor. And all of that could have been avoided really, really easily if they had planned ahead. So the next, thing that COVID has essentially taught us is that it's important to think about our health. You can flip to the next slide, Judy. And we again, when you get in the situation where you cannot speak to your own healthcare wishes, and whether that is, a treatment plan, whether that is a consent to surgery, or whether that's something as significant about, do you want to be put on a respirator? What about life support decisions? Have you thought through those? And if you're not able to speak to your wishes, is there someone who can do that for you, who would be authorized to do that for you, and who knows your wishes in those regards? And these are healthcare directives, documents that are critical and that have become even more important in our COVID times. And we always include these as part of our estate plan package. So when we talk about estate plan, it's not just your will, your trust, or anything like that. It's also healthcare directives. And then similarly, financial powers of attorney do something similar to healthcare, or these healthcare directives, is that you appoint someone to stand in your shoes as it relates to financial and legal decisions. And I sometimes tell people that this document, this financial power of attorney, is sometimes the most important document in terms of what makes the biggest impact on you and your life during your lifetime. I had a client where, the wife came in because her husband had a stroke, and he survived, and they were rehabbing him, but he was not able to, at that point, sign any paperwork or had the capacity to do that. And she had a whole mess with her homeowner's insurance policy and her house because everything was in his name, and they wouldn't talk to her because nothing was in her name. And if she had had a power of attorney for him, she would have had the authority to do anything that, on his behalf, that she would have been, that she otherwise would have been able to do. Things like pay bills, access accounts, make decisions, even carry on a business sometimes, for those of you that own small businesses. You can go ahead to the next place. So when we talk about the estate planning process, what does that mean? I'm an estate planning attorney. I do this every day. And we like to focus in on 3 main pieces here. First is the people, okay? And these are the people in your life, not just your beneficiaries, your children, your charities, anyone that you want to leave money to, but also your we call them fiduciaries, your trusted fiduciaries in your life, the people that you want to nominate to carry out your wishes during your lifetime and then after you've passed on. And then the second big piece is kind of doing an inventory of your assets. So, this is a good thing to do regardless of whether or not you're doing an estate plan, because for a lot of people, if something unexpected happened or your kids needed to figure out what you owned, if they don't know now, but something happened unexpectedly and they needed to find all your important documents, would they know? Do you have a list somewhere all in one place that says, hey, I have accounts at Key Bank, at Chase Bank, I have a retirement account here, I have, life insurance here, doing an inventory, and Craig has some great forms that make this really easy to do. Putting that together really solidifies, and it also tells the estate planning attorney or the estate coach, what type of plan you need, and allows us to tailor it to your specific situation. And then obviously the documents, right? The documents are what brings it home. You know, we got to get those in place. You got to get them signed. And we'll talk a little bit more about the specifics on that as we go on here. So again, this is, you know, when we have these discussions, we're trying to do this holistically. So we take a look at, you know, we talk about you, we talk about your family, we talk about your goals. What, you know, what is your family like? How do your kids get along? If something happened to you, would they be able to work together? If you have small children or you have grandchildren that you want to provide for, how do we need to structure that in a way that will allow the money that you leave them to be a benefit and not a burden? Okay. So, you know, those are all parts of the pieces. Are there special needs considerations? Is there someone with special needs, or that you just have a concern about their ability to manage their assets well after you've passed away? Or are they on Medicaid or disability? Because inheriting a large amount of money, if you know, are on one of those types of programs, can actually disqualify you. So those types of things we need, you know, we have a holistic discussion about you and your family as we're going through this process. You can go ahead to the next one. And then the people that you choose to carry out your plan, the flip side of the people task here. You know, who is going to be the one that you're going to trust to carry this out? They need to be people that you trust implicitly, that you know they have a good head on their shoulders, that they will be able to ask for help if they need it, if it becomes, you know, too difficult, that if they need to hire an attorney or they need some assistance, whether it be managing assets or going through a legal process, that they will do that. And that, you know, you don't have any reservations about their ability to act in these different roles. So again, financial power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, and then after you pass away, then you have an executor over a will or a trustee over a trust. And then the inventory asset process, I already talked about this a little bit, but these are the types of things that we want to talk about. We want to take stock of, and, you know, we want to know how they're titled. Are they titled jointly with you and your spouse? Is there a beneficiary designation on it? So the easiest way to talk about beneficiary designations is with like life insurance. When you set up a life insurance policy, you know, most people set up a beneficiary designation. Well, we can set up a beneficiary designation pretty much for any asset you can think of, even cars and boats, even real estate. So, you know, and the benefit to beneficiary designations is that it usually allows for a smoother transfer of assets, especially if you don't have a trust. So I'm going to talk about the wills and trusts question next. And this is something that we get all the time. Okay. Do I need a trust? Rachel, do I need a trust? You know, I went to a seminar and the attorney told me I needed a trust, or all my money was going to go to Medicaid, or, you know, my sister has a trust. What does that mean? What's the difference? What, you know, so, you know, this is something that we spend a lot of time talking with people, and we take stock of your people and of your assets. And through that conversation, we can determine whether or not it makes sense to put a trust in place for you. So what are some similarities between wills and trusts? The similarities between them are that they're both documents that specify your last wishes as it relates to your assets and who is going to receive your assets. Okay, so who do you want to leave your money to? Both of these documents do that. Both of these documents specify and appoint someone to carry those wishes out. If you're talking about a will, that's an executor. If you're talking about a trust, that's called a trustee. The differences are a little bit more involved. So we're going to work through this a little bit. I don't want you to get overwhelmed by it. But think of a will as, and you know, most people are pretty familiar with a will. Okay, it's a document that you write up. You say, here are my beneficiaries I want to receive my assets. Here's my executor. What happens next with a will? Okay, so stay on that left side with me there. If you pass away and all you have is a will, which a lot of people do, and all your assets pass through your will. What happens is that will is then filed with the probate court in the county where you reside. And the court, again, supervises the process of transferring the assets to your beneficiaries, okay? This is a perfectly valid way to do this, okay? Especially if you have a situation where it is important that there is a court oversight on what is going on, beneficiaries who don't get along, there's going to be conflict, or you just need another set of eyes, or you need another set of eyes on the process. Sometimes if you have small children and you just don't end up going the trust route, which I'll talk about a little bit, then again the court needs to supervise the transfer of assets as it relates to minor children. It's relatively less expensive to set up. When we do a will-based plan for someone, we're talking, this is going to be a will, and we're also going to do the financial power of attorney and healthcare documents for you. Okay. It can be more expensive on the back end simply because if you have to go through that court process, you're probably going to have to pay an attorney. You're probably going to have to pay court fees. There might be executor fees. In Ohio, an executor can take 4% of the assets that they administer or that they control as a fee, because it can be a big job. And it's also a good place to make your guardianship nomination if you have minor children. You don't have to put your guardianship nomination in your will, but if we're doing a will, that's a great place to do it. So that if something happened to you and your spouse, then the judge would be able to look at that and say, okay, this is the person they nominated to be the guardian for my children. So a trust, how does that work? A trust is something that instead of being filed with the probate court, it's administered privately, okay? It's administered out of court, unless there's a significant dispute or, someone does something that is inappropriate with the assets or someone needs to be called to task, then the court can take jurisdiction over that matter, but a lawsuit would have to be filed. It's not like it's a regular proceeding. So that avoids it's designed to avoid the probate court. It's also something that you can use to manage your assets while you're still alive. It allows you to, kind of put everything under an umbrella, and we actually transfer assets into a trust now while you're still alive. So you could put your house in your trust, you could put your bank accounts in your trust, you could put, all sorts of things in your trust so that it's all there and it's all funded. And when you die, there's not this like scramble to try to like find everything. Okay. So it kind of organizes it under one umbrella. And then the most exciting part of trust, and also that makes them kind of overwhelming, is that they're completely customizable. So you are able to do things like delay distributions to beneficiaries. So, you say, okay, I would feel a little nervous if, my children or maybe grandchildren just received a lump sum inheritance at 18, which if you have a will and the assets come through, if they're 18, they're an adult and the court's going to just distribute out everything to them. If you have a trust and the trust says, actually, let's wait until they're 30 to transfer everything out. Or let's be a little creative and say, let's transfer a third at 25, a third at 30, and a third at 35. Or let's say, you have someone with special needs, or in one of those situations I was talking about, like if they're on Medicaid or disability, and then we say, we're gonna just hold it, put some walls around it, protect it, and keep it safe pretty much until they pass away, long term, as long as it takes, until the money runs out or they pass away. That can be protected from any sort of third party creditor or state actor coming in to take it. So a trust is just this fantastic vehicle that we have in Ohio that allows us to take advantage and to really customize the document to your specific situation. Some reasons why maybe people don't need a trust. Your kids are all adults, they all get along, and they you know, you feel comfortable just passing everything out immediately. You know, if we do that, then we take a look at your assets, we take a look at your family members. We might say, hey, just a will make sense for you right now. You know, but add any sort of complexity to your situation, and then we have that discussion about a trust. Another reason would be like really complex assets or very high net worth is another reason that we do trusts in order to do some tax planning. So there's a variety of reasons that we use them. If you have, and this is something that's a little confusing, if you have a trust, we also do a will, okay? So if you have a trust, you usually have a will and a trust. If you don't have a trust, then obviously you just have a will. And the reason that we do both is that your will would kind of act as a pass-through. It would allow us to scoop up any assets we forgot to put in the trust during your lifetime and dump them all into the same bucket so that everything's operating and everything's being managed by the same document. So that was a really long kind of explanation, but this is probably the question that I get the most often. So I wanted to spend a decent amount of time on it. And I wanted to say too, like if you have questions as we've been going through, we're going to have some time at the end for questions, but you know, feel free to pop them in the chat too, in case you think you're going to forget about them later, or if something's confusing, feel free to, you know, put your question in the chat now and we'll make sure that we address it. So I'm going to turn it back over to Craig and he's going to finish out the presentation. And then, like I said, we'll have some time for questions at the end.
So your estate can only go 3 places when you die. That's it. 3 places: family and friends, charities or the causes that you're most concerned about, and then to the government in the form of taxes. And we talked before about the importance of this because if you don't have a plan in place, this is what it can feel like. It can feel like, oh my gosh, we're paying so much in taxes. And it's true. I've talked to many families. Where were you 5 years ago when we did my parents' estate and we paid 40% in taxes? And I'm sorry, you know, that didn't have to happen. If there's a plan in place, we can make it feel a lot less than that and be able to give more to the family and friends that you care about and the charities that you're concerned about, that you would like to provide for in an estate plan. So that's what's kind of cool about it. We're not saying we're going to reduce and get rid of all taxes, but we can definitely let them make the minimum so that more can happen for, like I said, family and friends and charity. So next slide is, if your children or grandchildren receive their full inheritance in a lump sum at age 18, how would they handle it? Now,
We'd love to hear their responses in chat. And I'm sure
yes,
there's some like, hey, yes, I'm good with it. No way, my kids can't handle it. Or maybe I'm a little nervous, but I think they can. What do you think? So we have 3 excellent savers and 1 spendthrift in one of the families. That's great. There always is, right? All right. I think I only have 1 child, so they're good.
Okay.
Oh, I think we're good.
All right. So we have found that, yeah, a little concerned they're young. That's a great one. I'm just going to throw out a little quick. So I have, I'm divorced and remarried. My 2 daughters, when they were young, my oldest one was a spender. She could not keep 2 nickels to her name. And the youngest one was a saver. In fact, she'd go to Target and try and, get the sales and everything. She was always concerned about saving as much money as possible. So when I bring that up is for this, because as they got older, the roles reversed. And the older one became the saver, and the younger one got a decent job and now is spending money, I think, way too much. But at the same time, it's interesting, as your kids grow, it can make a big difference. So you got to think of it from the standpoint of, as they mature, as they in age, are they getting better with money or worse with money? And things can change over time. So distribution options, lump sum, that I'm not a big fan of it. I'll be real honest with you. I'm not a big fan of it because I've seen too many bad things happen when it's lump sum, because it does depend on the financial maturity of children. Not because they're 42 years old, they can handle it. They might still, I've known people in their 50s that blow money. So the age does not make the difference. It's how well they handle it is the difference. And like I said, if you have 3 children, you know, odds are one of them is poor with money. This is an actual statistic. Now, this next one, this is from the automobile industry, that if you receive over $200,000 in a lump sum distribution, there is a 72% chance that you are in a new car showroom within 18 days of receiving your money. That's an actual statistic. Now, here's what I find fascinating about it. When parents are polled and said, what would you like your kids to do with their inheritance? You know what never comes up? Go to a car showroom and buy a new car. They're thinking about it for other things that are possible. So it's fascinating how distributions can actually hurt more than help a child. I just want to share one story with you. Her name's not really Emily, but I just used the name Emily. And it's a person I know that's here in the Milwaukee area. 27 years old, 1 child, married, massage therapist by trade, and she was $27,000 in credit card debt. Her dad passed away. She received $300,000 in a lump sum distribution. Her first thought was not how to pay off the debt or what she could do from a positive standpoint to help her in a better position. She thought, what could I do with this money and maybe somehow memorialize my dad? And she had memories of her being in a canoe on the boundary waters of Canada, in a canoe with her dad. And she goes, that's it. I'm going to buy a boat. Now, do you think she went out and bought a canoe? Nope. She went out and bought a $50,000 pontoon boat and put it on Lake Pewaukee outside of Milwaukee area here. Left it there all summer. Didn't have any way to move it. Her husband, who's in construction, goes, hey, let's buy a truck. So what they do? They had the money. Let's go out and buy a truck. So they went out and bought a $50,000 truck to buy the $50,000 pontoon boat. Then she started thinking, you know, I'm a massage therapist. I rent from other people. Wouldn't it be better if I bought a building, fixed it up, and then people had to rent space from me? It's not a bad idea, but as you know, in real estate, it's location, location, location. She picked a bad location, which is why she got a good price. She paid $125,000 for the building, put $50,000 of renovations into it. And the last I heard, she had $4,000 left over, and she still had $27,000 of credit card debt. Now, I bring this up to you because that all happened in 17 months. The average inheritance lasts 5 years. That's it, 5 years. So that's why I'm a major fan of let's spread some of that out over time. And there's charitable opportunities to be able to do that. So you can manage over amounts over long. It protects the assets for longer. It can be used for a variety of financial costs. And there you can just see some of those examples there. So the idea of an inheritance is a safety net, not a hammock. Now, they look similar, but they have 2 different roles completely. So next slide, please.
Rachel's asked if we could show the results again really quick about the polling questions before you go to the next one, okay?
Okay.
So there we go, Rachel.
How people answered that first time around.
So scroll all the way down to the bottom because I think there's the 4th one is what
Yeah,
we're.
here's the 4th question.
Yeah.
71% say they'd be concerned.
Can you scroll? I don't see the scroll down on mine. Sorry.
Cover
It says
your
still
mouse
1 to 3.
over it and scroll down yourself, Craig.
Oh, sorry. Okay, got it. I thought someone else was in control. Sorry. Sorry, people. This is our first time a tag team in this way, and we're in 2 different cities. So we did work out the slides. It's just some of these little bits right here. So anyway.
Technology.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Excellent. Okay, good.
You guys are doing great.
All right. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks, Doris.
All right, next slide.
All right, hang on. Here we go.
All right. Questions to consider is how much is too much? That's one of the biggest questions I have that I sit down with families about when we're talking about this. What's too much to give your children in a lump sum distribution? What could hurt them or harm them? I just got to tell you this quick story. This is a family that I worked with in Las Vegas Lutheran High School. He was worth $9 million. He had one child, and he wanted everything to go to his child. And so the distribution was that age 22, she would get 25% of it. At age 26, she would get 25% of it. And at age 30, she'd get 50% if something happened to him. So you're looking at age 22, she would have gotten roughly about $225,000. I mean, $2,250,000. Another $2,250,000 to age 26, and $4,500,000 to age 30. So my first question I had for him was, do you think she's going to work at all? I mean, what is she going to do? She has $9 million in 9 years. What is she going to do? And then a couple, I think they're important questions. I said, so let me ask you a question. Did you receive an inheritance when you were young? And he goes, nope, didn't. I said, well, how are you doing? He goes, almost kind of proud. He's like, well, I'm worth $9 million. I guess I'm doing pretty good. And I say, okay, if someone gave you $2,250,000 when you were 22, do you think you'd be where you are today? You know what the answer always is? No way. So then the real question comes down to this. Why would you want to do that to your daughter then? So it's important questions to ask when you think about inheritance is, do they need it? Are they going to be benefited by it? Is it going to make them more energized? Is it going to be less energized? Remember the safety net versus the hammock, so being a good steward is very important. And here's the other thing, people. $62 trillion is going to be passed in the next 35 years. Is that what it is, Rachel? I think 35 years, $62 trillion. That's a chunk of change. So there's going to be
They say it's going to be the biggest wealth transfer in history.
Right. That's amazing. So how we do it is just as important as it being done. So next one. So estate options, you got the simple will. We talked about that. Rachel talked about it. We can have a will trust for minors, and then to give it twice plan. So Rachel, I think you're going to take this again. So go ahead if you wanted to.
Sure. So, we can talk a little bit about, what is a will? What's the purpose of a will? We can have it go to, to the family. Obviously, that would be your children. That would be your spouse. It could benefit if you don't have children or a spouse. A lot of times people like to provide for their nieces and nephews. Or, a lot of times we put contingency plans in our wills and also trusts to say, if something happened to my whole family, there was just kind of like a common accident, who would I want to inherit my money then? And a lot of times people then, want to provide for siblings or nieces and nephews. You can also provide to charity. So charities are great beneficiaries of estates because they can take any assets tax-free. Now, inheritance per se is not taxed just because you're getting it, unless you're above a certain estate value. Right now, at this exact moment, you'd have to have over $11.5 million to worry about an estate tax at the federal level. That will probably come down, but it's still going to be in the millions. So if you're not in that range, then your beneficiaries, you aren't worrying about estate tax. But we do worry about things like income tax, especially for your assets that are retirement assets. So if you have a 401k or you have an IRA that is tax deferred, so it's not a Roth, you're just your regular IRA, your regular 401k. When you retire and you start making, taking your distributions out of there, you're going to have to pay income tax at that point, like it's income to you. If you pass away before you've completely taken all the money out of those retirement accounts and it goes to your beneficiaries, they're going to have to pay income tax on any distribution that comes out. If instead you leave all or maybe a portion of your IRA or 401k to a charitable organization, they can take it tax-free. So they actually don't have to pay the full income tax on it like, you know, an individual beneficiary would. So when people start asking like, what's the best way to give to charity? What's, you know, what makes the most sense as I look at my assets? Sometimes it's not to just list them in your will as a beneficiary. Sometimes, you know, leaving them named on a retirement asset makes the most sense. So again, it is something that you'd want to tailor to your specific situation and talk, you know, to your attorney about, but that is something that, you know, for a lot of people works very nicely.
Do you want me to take this one real
Yeah,
quick?
why don't you go ahead and
Okay.
do your thing on it.
So this is a give it twice. It's called a charitable remainder unit trust or testamentary trust. This is usually what happens at the second death. So nothing gets funded, nothing happens until both the couple dies. And so this is an example of a property of $750,000 that includes the home, the IRA, life insurance. And we put into the trust in this, that charitable remainder unit trust, in the red box would be $500,000. We're just going to say that's the IRA. Okay, that's the IRA. Now, as a result of it going to in a charitable remainder unit trust, all the tax is taken off of that IRA because the principal eventually is going to charity. That's in the orange box. In the meantime, over the 20 years, what it's going to do is it's going to pay an income to your children for 5% a year for up to 20 years. So if you had 2 children, you could, each child, that'd be $25,000. They would be splitting $25,000 a year for 20 years. So they each would get $12,500 a year for 20 years. You would get the brown, I don't know what color box that is, brown box, I guess, at the top where it says family. That would be at the second death initially, and then the trust gets funded, and then they get an income of $12,500 a year each for 20 years. And then you have to pay ordinary income tax, whatever tax bracket they're in, for that income. So it's a great way, because literally over the 20 years, time value of money based on about a 6% return, you can see where the trust grows to 500 and the income is 500. So you literally have doubled your money over 20 years. So your family is going to get the entire estate just over 20 years, 250,000 up front, and then 12,500 each for 20 years for the remaining of it. And then at the end, this is the coolest part, you get to give away $500,000. Now think about that. On a property that's $750,000, you're able to give away $500,000. And people who are charitable minded, this is a great option. Or if they just want to eliminate some taxes, this is a great option. I've shown families this where they had no idea, no real desire to give that much to charity. They see this as an option of getting rid of any of the tax off their IRA. Then they're very open to the charity, and because it spreads out payments to the kids, and a foundation takes care of all of this. You don't have to worry about family members or anybody else. You have to appoint anybody. You just go through a foundation and they take care of it. So it's a great, great option. In fact, if you look at Forbes magazine in 2020, I think it was December or November, since the government took out the stretch IRA, they're saying this is the tool that most people are referring to now because it's tax-free growth, and it takes the place of that stretch IRA that we used to have that's not there anymore.
Yeah, I was going to add that too, Craig. I mean, this has become, I've seen more of these in the last 2 years than every previous year combined. Now, you know, I've not been practicing 40 years, but you know, they've become super popular. And the reason, one of the main reasons is, now if you're leaving, you know, one of those IRAs or 401ks to your children, they have to take the whole account out within 10 years of your death. Okay.
And pay all the taxes in 10 years.
Some exceptions, right? But a lot of times what happens then, if you think of, you know, you have a $500,000 in an IRA, taking that out over 10 years, easily can bump your child up into the next tax bracket or 2. And so then they're paying not only more income tax on, you know, what they're pulling out of that IRA, they're paying more income tax on the rest of their income. You know what I mean? So usually the longer you can delay the distributions, because it used to be you could delay them, you know, basically based on your life expectancy. They have life expectancy tables, and a surviving spouse and some other categories of people can still do that. But when you're specifically talking about children and other beneficiaries, you have to take it out within that 10 years. Something like this allows you to not only, provide for a charity, but also stretch it out longer. You could stretch it out 20 years instead of just 10. And it's something that you can have the trustee manage, as opposed to, I heard a statistic not too long ago. I was sitting through a presentation with a financial institution, and they told me that when people inherit IRAs and 401ks, it's something upwards of 70% of the accounts are empty after 3 years. So even if you could stretch it out over 10 years, a lot of people just take it out quicker than that. And again, you're bumping yourself up into a higher tax bracket when you do that a lot of the times. But so there's a lot of benefit to delaying it as long as possible. And this is just one avenue that is a fantastic way of doing that. That also allows for a charitable component. So that's all I had to add to that one.
That was a great additions. And I know that we have just a few minutes left. So Craig, maybe you want to share a little bit of the process and open up for Q&A.
Sure. So if you choose to do this, then we'll give you the link to sign up for at the end of the session. And then also it's going to be in Ashley's email after we get done today. But this is what's basically is going to happen. Session one that we get together is we collect as much data as we can. We're going to find out about family, professional advisors, power of attorneys. Who do you choose for all these roles? We're going to talk about any charitable desires and goals that you might have. So we want to, and then if you, whatever information you don't have that first day, don't worry about it. It's going to be your homework. Say, we're going to come up with a due date for you, everything. And then your responsibility is to get it back to us within a certain time period. Then we create a booklet for you. And we go through and we set up another time appointment where we go through the booklet. And this can be digital or a hardcover. And we send that to you if it's a hardcover. But if you just go through it on the digital, through the computer, we just do a Zoom call with you and we go through all these options that you have. And we get you attorney ready. That's our goal. So that when we pass you on to Rachel, you're pretty well informed with what you want to do, why you want to do. You got the terms down, you got to feel a little bit more comfortable. And then Rachel walks you through all the legal part of it. And we get this done in 120 days or less. That's the goal. So yeah, it's a free service, first off, that the Cleveland Lutheran High School Association is putting on. There's no cost to you to go through it with us. And most people are really glad that they did. So
Ashley, would you, before we ask for any questions?
Yeah, so I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to jump on this call. I hope it was beneficial to you. I've listened to it, Craig, present this probably 10 times, and each time I hear something new that I didn't learn before, and I think it's really beneficial. I've never seen Craig do it along with an attorney, and I think there was just added information in there that Rachel provided that you can really benefit from. So as Craig said, I'll send out a follow-up email from this that will include the presentation and some information that you got today, along with this link if you want to sign up with a one-on-one estate coaching session with Craig. I will ask though, I see there are some people that jumped on here, which I'm so happy about, that didn't sign up for the session. If that's you, could you just stay on for a minute or two after we end so that I can verify that I have the right email address for you to send that follow-up email to. But just want to thank you again, and I hope this was helpful. And
real quick, can I just introduce Steve really quick so that he's the other estate coach that might be working. So Steve,
yes,
if you're on real quick.
Craig, can I jump for a second?
Yep.
Craig, you might have said this. I was typing an email when you were finishing up just a second ago, but did you talk about the $500 reimbursement?
I did not get a chance to yet.
So right now, the high school association, just as a emphasis or push to people to kind of get their estate plans in place because we feel it's so important. Right now, we're offering anybody who signs up with Craig and finishes their estate plan in 120 days or less, we'll reimburse $500 of your legal fees. And so Rachel knows about that going into it, and she'll talk you through how to get that information over to me so that we can get that reimbursement started, but not something we're going to be able to offer forever, obviously, but something that we're doing now.
And I want to emphasize to people too, like, if you don't have an attorney or you need an attorney, like you can come to me after working with Craig or Steve. But if you have your own attorney or you know someone
Yes.
that you want to work with, like that's fine too. And I believe the $500 will work regardless of, who you go with in terms of an attorney. So from an attorney, you get to choose. I want to make that clear that you get to choose who your attorney is.
But I want to throw this in. I work with attorneys all over the United States, and Rachel is my favorite. I just want to, I'm not just saying that because she's on here. I'm serious. She is very good at what she does. So I just want you to know that that I literally work with people all across the United States and attorneys all in 5 different states. And she is my favorite by far. Just real quick, Steve Blandorf, just say hi real quick, because Steve might be working with you also.
Hi, everyone. I apologize for the snafu earlier today. I finally got everything working, I think. So I'm watching on my computer. I'm listening through my iPhone. So we're working, making technology work. But I'm a retired Lutheran high school administrator. I live in the Austin, Texas area. And the last year or so, I've been working with Craig and working with several families already with Cleveland Lutheran. And it's just been a joy for me to learn this business and to work with people and on their wills and their trust. And working with Rachel now has been a great joy as well. So look forward to working with many of you as possible.
That's great. Thank you, Steve. So if you'd like to stay on and ask some questions of our panelists, that would be terrific. And I have to underscore, it is an exceptional circumstance to have an association actually help sponsor through some of the payments. So that is an amazing benefit to this community. So that's way to go. So do we have anyone that has any questions?
Or you could put it in the chat. You could put a question in the chat too if you had anything. If not, feel free to reach out to Craig or I individually. Our email addresses are here, and they'll also be provided in a follow-up email.
Doris, how did everyone do?
Everyone did wonderful, wonderful, very, very informative information that I needed. But I also do have a question, and it's for Ms. Lyons. I'm Doris, and I work at the Lutheran East location in Cleveland Heights in the Welcome Center department. So I'm the first face you see when you come into the building. My question is, I have purchased a pre-planned funeral service. So I'm like almost maybe $1,000 shy from paying it off. But in the process of purchasing that, I also created a will through the funeral home services also. Okay. I'm the parent of one child, and she will be 18 this year. As a matter of fact, she's graduating this year also.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so excited. So much, everything is up and down with me right now. But my question is, when Craig explained the difference between the trust and the will, being that I do have a will and I also have a pre-planned, pre-purchased funeral service, should I still look at creating a trust or leave everything as is?
Good question. I can't, I don't know your whole situation. So, this is kind of just general concepts, not specific advice. Okay. But do you have a power of attorney or healthcare power of attorney in place?
I do not.
Okay. So,
I do not.
Doing, because like I had said at one point, those documents can be sometimes the most important documents to make a big difference during your lifetime. If you are temporarily incapacitated or, unreachable or permanently, those documents are really important. And they're part of our estate plan when we talk about estate planning. And Craig and Steve would, walk through with you. If you have a will already, normally what I do is I just take a quick look at it. And if it's fine and it completely fits your needs, then there's no reason to change it. You know what I mean? Sometimes there's like an amendment to make. Sometimes, you do talk about a trust. And since your daughter's almost 18, we'd want to talk about, different things in terms of like her inheriting money. But a prepaid funeral plan is a good thing. It definitely is something that a lot of people find very beneficial and helpful to those, left behind to know that
Mhm.
everything's set. So
Absolutely.
that's great.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
great.
Well,
Now you're on the right track.
you know what, Miss Rachel, I have to be. But one thing about the funeral home is that they do reach out to me yearly to come in and do an update just in case of, say, the church that I want to have the funeral service in is closed.
Your friend.
Then I can update that as we go every year. So
What
that's a
funeral
good
home
thing.
is this?
It is E.F. Boyd Funeral Home located in Cleveland.
Yeah. Well, that's
Mhm.
great. I mean, I would recommend, like, it doesn't, it doesn't hurt or cost anything to talk with Craig and Steve. So if you
Okay.
go and talk to them, talk through what you have currently, and maybe they recommend just doing the powers of attorney, that is
Okay.
probably, I mean, that would be
My daughter was still,
$500 easily. So
I would still need a power of attorney, even though she's turning 18, and everything is going to her.
everyone needs a power of attorney.
Okay, got it.
Everyone. I
I
have people who, their kids are going off to college. Your
Yes.
18-year-old needs a power of attorney, because I've had situations where your kid's off at school and they're in the hospital, and the doctors will not talk to you because they are 18 and they don't have permission to give out their medical information.
Point taken.
All
Okay.
the time I have people come in with, my kid's going off to college, or my kid's going on a trip, can we get a healthcare power of attorney? Can we get a financial power of attorney? And they don't have any assets, right? So
Okay.
that's kind of something that exists outside of all this asset planning that everyone should have, regardless of who you are. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Did anybody else have questions?
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's great differences from state to state. Craig, I'm up in Wisconsin, and so I'm a graduate of Lutheran West, but I'm living in Wisconsin now, retired. And would there be big differences in what was presented with what I would need to do in a different state than Ohio?
Probably not. There's might be some minute changes, but not really.
Okay.
I would think so. I'd have to go through your information to actually know if there's anything. We live in a state that it's mutual. I mean, so marital property law. So, are you married?
Nope.
Okay, so you don't have to worry about that part.
I adopted 4 kids, so I've got plenty of kids.
How
But
wonderful. That's awesome.
I don't think you have to worry about that much differences. I think it's just more important that you get something in place.
And Craig would be able to direct you to a Wisconsin attorney, because that is important.
Right.
That's somebody licensed in the particular state.
Where do you live, Kathleen?
Madison.
Okay, yep, no worries.
I work for the state. I'm here to help.
Okay.
That's
We have
great.
somebody
And-
from Illinois too.
Yes, I was going to say, we have a question from Georgia. And she said her husband is an alumni of Lutheran West and is a retired Lutheran school administrator in Illinois.
Yep.
Is our Metro East Lutheran High School involved with Craig's Give It Twice program?
No, I have not. I do not have a contract with them at this point in time.
Well, what do you mean? So the Cleveland Lutheran High School Association is working with Craig. So this is open to
Alumni?
to anybody Lutheran East or Lutheran West, or just anybody in our community that's not an alum, open to current families, to past parents of students, all of our alumni, or just friends of the community. So it is available for anybody on either side of town, Lutheran East or Lutheran West.
So she's free to reach out to you through the association and Craig.
Yes.
That's great, Georgia. So you're good to go.
Anybody else have any questions or thoughts or?
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hi.
we can hear you.
Hi. What about artwork? I know that's more complex. I suppose everything has to be appraised and then take it from there. My mom passed, and boy, I'm like 7 years into dealing with this. And so I I'm trying to figure who and what I will leave the work to between family and charity.
Yeah, art can have it can have it can have some complexities around it. And yes, appraisals are normally something that become very important. And being specific in terms of if who you're leaving it to. If you just say, a lot of the default language that we use in wills and trusts is like, we leave it to our children or to these set of people to be split up as they agree. And artwork is normally included in personal property, but so they would just kind of divide it up if you just kind of left it. But plenty of people say, I want this piece to go to this person and this piece to go to this person, this piece to, but you'd have to specify that, one way or another, and then also have some way for us to identify it. Sometimes people put sticky notes on the back. Sometimes people take pictures. I have documents in my will vault, like packets where people have taken pictures of stuff, and then, this person gets this thing. So, we try to kind of work within that framework. And then with charity, obviously, as a component of that, we'd probably want to reach out to the institution first, especially if it's like a museum or something like that, and see if it's something they'd be interested in.
Okay, Viola Jr.
I'm excited you know my mom.
I graduated with her. I can see her in your face.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, how nice is that? That's good. That's awesome.
Lutheran East.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
70 something, right? I don't know what year.
1432.
Oh, so nice. I'll tell her that you said hi. She'll be excited.
That's great.
Someone else was going to say something. The gentleman, I interrupted him. He was about to say something in response to the
It's
art.
fine. We're all good.
Okay, thank you. Very helpful. I have your emails. I'll think about this and be in touch.